This is Europe's gateway. Wait, wrong one. Nope, still not this one, that's the one. This is the latest initiative from the European Union to invest in foreign countries. They have already done this in the past with the EU Gateway Business Avenue that saw East Asian countries like Japan, South Korea and China greatly benefit from these capital injections. But now, they are going global. This new program, called Global Gateway, will see the EU invest 300 billion euros in projects around the world, a scheme to compete with China's Belt and Road Initiative, the massive geopolitically influential network of infrastructure and transport investments run by Beijing. Estimates on how much China will put into the Belt and Road Initiative vary between 1.2 trillion and $8 trillion, but one thing is certain. While Europe plans to invest 300 million euros by 2027, China has already invested almost double of that by the past years alone. So Europe's plan seems to be concentrating that money on more specific strategies with the main focus on Africa. Half of the money will be invested in African countries that have seen trade with the old continent continually decline ever since the decolonization period. The countries that make up the European Union made up nearly two-thirds of Africa's trade in the 60s, which was down to 28% in 2011 and 33% today. 150 billion euros will be used to invest in healthcare, education and teacher training, with the empowerment of girls and women claimed to be a priority. This is what the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, had to say in a conference with the African Union.
We should not follow the notion of expecting the African Union to adapt to the European Union, but a true partnership is to explore possibilities together.
We can expect a package of at least 150 billion euros for Africa for the next 7 years. This is the first package under our Global Gateway strategy, and now we need you to tell us what the needs are and what the needs for the best for the people is. With this new package, we want to catalyze investments in 3 categories. The first, of course, is infrastructure. And there the top priority is energy. Energy, the pathway to renewable energy, and of course the transition towards renewable energy.
Ties between Africa and Western Europe have existed for centuries, although they haven't been particularly equal. First, there was a trade slave with African kingdoms which fueled the plantation economy of the New World. After that, Europe colonized much of the continent in the 19th century as part of the so-called Scramble for Africa. This left a legacy of exploitation that is still visible in much of the continent. African economies are still focused mainly on resource extraction, in part for the European market. The borders of these countries reflect neither geographical or ethnic boundaries, but colonial divisions. And some countries still function under institutional remnants of colonialism in the form of the CFA franc in West Africa, which gives France control of the monetary policies of some of its former colonies. Europe, as a result of this long and complex history, has been the main actor for the past several decades in terms of security, trade, and aid. But that influence has seen a relative decline. Some African leaders seem cautious to trust Europe again due to that same history. Just listen to what the president of Ghana had to say right next to France's president, Emmanuel Macron.
You look also at the history that has gone on between Africa and Europe. That is a natural relationship and a natural alliance, but a relationship that has to be different from the relationship that we've had up to now. Why do I say so? That relationship has enriched Europe, but has not enriched Africa. So we need to change that dynamic. And we can only do it by ourselves taking the correct measures for our future.
This energetic confidence and belief has been created due to the fact that Africa no longer depends solely on their colonial past. Despite the fact that the countries most involved have been the former colonizers of France, Spain, Portugal, Italy and Belgium, and to a lesser extent Germany and the Netherlands, doesn't mean that they have been united in the same goals. The EU still acts as a group of individuals rather than a whole, and that creates some inefficiencies. Another problem that the Union faces is that it is far from being the only international player competing for greater political and economic relations with the African continent. The UK, India, Turkey, Russia and France are all among a group who have either hosted or are holding African-focused investment conferences in recent years. Across the ocean, meanwhile, the US has also begun to flesh out its new trade and investment offer to African leaders. But there is one country that far outweighs them all: China. Xi Jinping's government is without a doubt the most influential player in the region. Just look at this map. The major trade partners for almost all of the countries is the PRC. China has already supported some truly immense infrastructure projects, from hydroelectric dams to fiber optic lines and entire ports. Economic and political relationships have been forged along the way, so we could expect some similar success to the global gateway. But when we go into detail on Europe's plan, we see that it doesn't even include a list of projects, meaning that at this stage the global gateway seems to be more of a statement of intent than any sort of real plan. At least that's what skeptics claim. While on the other hand, analysts argue that this shows the true willingness of Europe to listen to the African leaders and discuss on mutual ground what will benefit them the most. Like I mentioned in my previous video about Africa potentially replacing Russia for Europe's energy needs, there is still a shadow over the people of Africa due to the colonial past. A shadow that is now trying to be fixed by the old countries that ruled colonial empires, or depending on your point of view, you could see this new interest in Africa as a second scramble, but only time will tell. For now, in my opinion, the EU is trying to do the right thing. Unlike China, that accepted greater risk in their loans, ignored political situations, and didn't concern itself with human rights, Europe is not trying to apply the famous debt traps mechanics, or to incentivize corrupt governments, or even to put money into dubious businesses that abuse people and their rights of living. Putting that aside, let's quickly compare some of the projects that define both initiatives. On the EU program, as I mentioned, it all seems very vague and with no actual orientation on what to do next. Some of the biggest projects included Africa's biggest wind farm in Kenya, an $8.5 billion deal to help break South Africa of its dependence on coal, and a 5.5 megawatts of solar energy facility deployed in South Africa, while on the Chinese side, well, the list seems almost endless. Massive hydropower plants in Gabon and Nigeria that has also seen the creation of a large thermal power station together with Sudan. Multi-million-dollar water treatment stations, roads, high-speed trains, gigantic bridges, deep water ports, and the list goes on and on. But more on China in a later video. From the outside, it feels like the money is not being used to simply generate more capital, but to improve the lives of millions of people, stabilize the societies, and secure the well-being of our planet. By investing in border security, coordinating military training missions, and engaging in various military operations, several of its member states are trying to both secure their investments and improve the lives of everyday people. Just look at this map that shows all the active military bases in the continent. If you notice, excluding the US, most of the countries here are European nations that used to be colonizers. And like I mentioned in the video about Africa replacing Russia as Europe's natural gas supplier, Mozambique is a great example that represents what is happening across the continent. Developing countries that are full of natural resources are seeing European leaders come and fill their speeches with hope and dreams of a greater future, sign pacts of cooperation, and when needed, send their military to the region in order to secure their investments. If you'd like to know why Portugal has sent 5 times more troops to Mozambique than the United States itself, or do you simply want to understand a bit more about Africa and the EU deals happening right now and how it plans to ditch Russia on its oil and gas, make sure to watch the video on the screen. Thanks for watching until the end, and obrigado.